but we are all learning. We are all definitely learning together. Um, and basically, the focus of what today is pretty much going to be about is that a lot of us know or we have an understanding of what AWS entails now, right? But some of the reasoning behind some of those things we might not be very familiar with. Like if I was to ask you, what is the reason why we're creating a route table? And why do we have to make sure that we configure it properly for everything to work properly, to work the way that it should? Some of us will get hung up in the best ways to answer that question. So we're just going to go into detail in regards to some of those things and some of the procedures. We'll probably be repeating some information that a lot of us know, but we will all have to collaborate here a little bit in terms of, I want us to be able to talk and actually bump ideas together and brush our minds together and see if we can come up with better solutions and better understanding of what we're looking at. Now that, with that being said, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay, so the host has disabled participant screen sharing. I'm gonna need you to allow me to be able to share my screen. Just to make sure, is everybody hearing me properly?
Yeah, can you go ahead again and try re-share the screen?
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I'm not 100% sure, but let's try this. All right, can everybody see the slide that is currently on the display right now? Please, everyone, I'm gonna need some input here. I wanna be able to hear you guys talking as well. It's not gonna be just a one-sided conversation that we're having today. I'm gonna need some input from you guys. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, very well.
Okay, perfect. Now, there is something I'm going to have to make you guys aware of, because there was some people that were asking questions in regards to CIDR blocks and actually understanding how or why we have a need to have some type of understanding of CIDR blocks. At a later date, we will actually have somebody that has very intimate knowledge about it to speak on it for us, because it is very important for us to know. Although when you go into an organization, depending on the type of organization that you're going into, you might not be the one that has to come up with what the CIDR blocks or what the CIDR needs to be or what the IP range needs to be. But just to have that foundation or at least some base knowledge of it would be very good in our careers going forward. But like I said, at a later date, we will go in depth into that information there for the CIDRs. But for today, we are going back to VPCs. We're starting from VPCs, but we're going to be speaking in regards to a lot of the resources that we have within AWS and the reasons why we utilize them and the advantages of having them, right? When you look at the first slide that I have here in regards to the virtual private cloud, being a network or basically a data center for our AWS clients, whatever type of organization that you have that is working within the cloud space, whether they do have on-prem resources or not, they would be utilizing some form. Well, you have to utilize a virtual private cloud to have your own segregated section within the cloud space. basically, I believe right now we all understand that concept in regards to that aspect of a VPC. If you still have questions in regards to why we have a VPC, or why the VPCs are being created, please just let me know and we can, go a little bit more into details about VPCs. But I believe now we're all semi-professionals and I think we understand that aspect of it. Would that be safe to do we all agree on that? Tim, you cannot see the screen.
Okay, Tolu, I think you should continue, just continue with that. Continue what you're doing, follow your plan for the day. And if we have questions, we'll come in and ask. Thank you.
Okay, not a problem. That's perfectly fine. But you're saying you can't see the screen. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try to just reshare and I'm going to stop this and I'll reshare it. Okay. Excuse me. All right. I believe that should be a little bit better, if anything. Um, Moving on. Within our VPCs, we are aware that, okay, when you first create an AWS account, you're limited to the number of VPCs that you can create. Um, because of that's just how AWS is configured. You have to ask for them to increase your limits for this particular resource. I believe we have a soft spot of about 5 VPCs that you could create before you do need to ask for an extension or for more VPC allowance. Now, the max CIDR blocks per VPC is 5. For each VPCs, the minimum size that you can have is 28. /28 being for 16 IP addresses would be the minimum that you can have. If you look at the previous slide that I had earlier in regards to the amount of IP addresses that you can have within your CIDR, we would look at this slide. So when you look at your CIDR blocks and you're looking at your subnet masking, because this is when you now look at your IP addresses, and then you're also looking at your subnets, right? There's a reason why in the previous class that we did, we always utilize /16. And the reason why we utilize /16 being that, A, it allows us to have up to 65,536 IP addresses. So that gives us a lot of addresses to work with for any of the resources that we create within the organization. So when you look at this, that gives you a better idea of, what we're doing and what we're actually looking at. That's why I said it's good to have a base foundation of this aspect of things, just to know that, hey, why are you using /16? Why aren't you using /24? It could be, hey, we need more resources and we have a lot of microservices that we're going to be utilizing. So that's the reason why we need this many or this amount of IP addresses. Now, moving on. I'm not going to touch too much. Like I said, we do have somebody that's going to go very much more into detail about CIDR blocks and the IP address ranges. And that would definitely put a little bit more clarity for us within that space. Like I said, the main focus of today is pretty much going to be some of the VPC usages, what happens when we create a VPC, why we use how we configure everything to route it together. With AWS, we automatically get a default VPC that is loaded to us. Now, you can create a custom VPC, or you can just use the default VPC that is already within AWS. When you look at what that entails when you're utilizing the default VPCs, you know that, hey, you have a default CIDR, you'll have a default security group, you'll have a default network access control list, and the route table settings will also be there for you. As you all know, when you create a VPC, you will automatically have a route table created at that same time. So that's usually the one in which we now decide to put as a public VPC, a public route table, excuse me. Um, Automatically has an access to the internet gateway by default. And you also have the public and the private DNS names for you to configure later on as you go. But most of us do not utilize the default VPC. In this day and age now, most companies, obviously, you're going to be creating custom VPCs because your VPCs need to be created within the spec that you guys have for the organization. Some VPCs are very project specific, so you have to keep that in mind. That's why your naming conventions and things of that nature are very paramount when you're creating your VPC. What is the VPC being used for? In most organizations, like we were speaking, like I said earlier, most organizations will give you this information. So you will know, hey, we need a VPC created for this. And then they'll give you the stats or the sheet in regards to the information that is needed or how it needs to be configured. So when you're creating your own custom VPC, you know that you have to create your own CIDR block range. Usually that's why we use the /16 in most cases, just because we want the most, the most available in regards to IP address ranges. And then when we now create our subnets, we know that we're using the /24 at the end of it and configuring it accordingly. You have to create your own security group. You have to create the network access control list and the route table. These are all the steps that are pretty much needed for your custom VPC for you to have network access or internet availability within your organization. We'll speak a little bit more in regards to the network aspect of it. Now, on this VPC, your implied router. Now, this is where we start speaking about your router, which is how your information is being sent or how people are being able to gain access into your resources or into your network. That's how from the internet, it comes into your router. Then if your rules are put up in place accordingly there, it could either allow or deny access to your resources. Basically, your router is the central VPC routing function for your organization there. It connects all your availability zones together to your internet gateway and your private gateways when you configure it accordingly. Each subnet, as you all know, will have a route table. That the route table is what the router uses to forward the traffic within the VPC. The route table can also have entries to external destinations. So when we start talking about external destinations and things of that nature, that gets a little bit more complex, which is when we start talking about endpoint utilizations and things of that nature there. But I'll keep it simple here. We're just trying to have a good understanding why you have your router. Hold on, for some reason. Are you guys seeing the current slide that I'm on right now with the VPC implied router?
Can you say it again?
Are you guys seeing the current slide that I am on right now?
Yes, yes.
So you see the VPC implied router on the display?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. For some reason, it's not showing up on my end. I just want to make sure. Okay, so basically, like I was saying earlier, good evening. As I was saying, we have the router configured, which is what creates the access from your NAT gateway, right? Which is how we're distributing the traffic that is coming within the VPC or from your VPC to another endpoint. Your route table configuration will give you the rule, will give you the ability to set the rules that will govern that network traffic. Because of how everything is being distributed, the route table makes sure that you're able to, you can set the rules to explicitly deny traffic coming into your network. A little bit more in regards to the route table. As you know, there's a reason why we do our subnet associations when we create the route table within our VPC. So each subnet must be associated with only one route table at any given time. Otherwise, you will get a lot of errors when that happens or when you try to do that. If you do not specify a subnet to route table association, when the subnet is created, it will be associated to the default route table created, within your AWS account. So go to the default route table. You can always configure and change your subnet association to another route table when you need to, but it can only be associated with one route table at a time. You can always edit the main route table if you need to, but you cannot delete the default route table that was created by AWS within your account. Everybody knows, we've worked with route tables enough to understand that when we create the route table and we have it associated, you have to set the rules in place whether or not you're going to allow incoming traffic into your network. If you do not, nobody should be able to come in. In most situations anyway, it is a stateless function. So you do have to have those rules in place, or else it will explicitly deny entrance into your VPC. We're not going to speak too much in regards to that. The subnet association, like I said, we're still going to speak a little bit more on that later, but let's get into our internet gateway. Since we're still talking, about the connectivity aspect of our VPC, having access to the internet, and granting access to our resources. The internet gateway is what helps your VPC and your resources within it to communicate and to connect with the internet and with your with the AWS services. When you have a highly available resources and you're trying to make your resources very redundant, everything scales out here horizontally. So duplicates of your resources are created. You're getting the same size resources, but it's scaling out as needed. Whenever the demand is higher, it will scale out. When the demand reduces, it will scale back in automatically. You can only attach one VPC or one internet gateway to your VPC and vice versa. So once you have an internet gateway associated with your VPC, you can attach it. You can detach that internet gateway and use it with another resource if need be. In most situations, in most organizations, you will find that you would be, creating specific internet gateways for particular resources, or for individual resources as needed. As you all know, the internet gateway performs as a static one-to-one NAT instance between your private IP addresses in your VPC and is allocated to your public as well. A lot of people definitely utilize the elastic IPs for most of our resources. If you guys remember, when we create our VPCs and we start to try to create our EC2 instances, because we don't want our IPs to just always be the same. We always use the elastic IP to give us a broader range for those addresses. Internet Gateway supports both the IPv4 and the IPv6 protocols. We'll talk more about those type of in itself at a later date as well. Now, keep in mind the internet gateway by itself. Let's say you create an internet gateway within AWS. By itself, it will not grant you access to the internet because there are no rules put into place. So for you to be able to gain access to the internet, whether or not you have an internet gateway attached, you need your route table. Your route table must be edited to allow that. And you have to have your subnets associated to allow you to be able to utilize the internet gateway. So always keep that in mind. If if you do not have your route table set, you will definitely still not be able to access the internet. You might find yourself in situations within your organization where everything has been created and you're wondering why you're not able to connect to the internet. You're not able to SSH into your instance, or you're not able to even pull up some of the resources that you're trying to gain access to. Really, nothing is changing on my end. You guys are not seeing the screen. Hold on one second. Let me know if that's better. You guys are good. Perfect. Now you guys made me lose track of thought. Can somebody remind me where I was? Nobody. Okay, no problem. So basically, like I was saying, if you do not have your route tables configured properly, you would not be able to get access to the internet. What are elastic IP addresses? One thing you have to keep in mind, IPs are the internet routable addresses that you can allocate to your VPC. They will always be associated to your VPC until you decide to release them. There's a reason why if you have an elastic IP that is not associated with any resources, you guys, I hope you guys are aware that that's when AWS does start to charge you for having those elastic IPs without it being attached to any resource. So keep that in mind as well. For you to be able to use the NAT gateway to gain internet access within your resources there, you definitely do need an elastic IP address for it to function. Just like your VPC, you have a soft limit of 5 elastic IPs that are associated per region for all your AWS resources. But you are able to extend or get more just by contacting AWS. They will definitely be able to assist you in increasing the elastic IPs or the IP addresses if you ever need more. When it comes to the IPv4 model here, you can see that the addresses are DHCP based, dynamically allocated, right, to your compute and are released back to AWS whenever you stop that instance. So a lot of times when you stop that, but the only thing here is when you stop your instances, sometimes those IP addresses will still be associated with your resource within AWS until you actually release it yourself. That's where the charges start to come in for you. Like I was saying earlier, you're not charged for the EIP if you are using it, but if you are not using it, you will definitely be charged. So always keep that in mind. Whenever you're practicing or whenever you're messing around with things within the management console for AWS, always keep in mind that if you're not using it, let it go, delete it if need be. so that you do not incur any charges. Basically, your net instances within AWS are pretty much the same thing, same thing as your NAT gateway. If you realize that with AWS, you need your internet gateway for you to gain access, for you to be able to gain access to the internet, right? Or for you to allow access for the internet. And that is just for your public facing resources. If you want to create internet access, or you want to be able to gain access to the internet from your private resources, let's say your database resources need to also be able to access the internet, you're going to want to utilize the NAT gateway for that. Keep in mind, when you attach the NAT gateway, it needs to be attached in the public subnet, in the public space of your resources there. So always keep that in mind for the NAT instances. Like we were still saying earlier, everything is associated, or you have to definitely configure your route tables for you to be able to route the traffic accordingly from both your public and your private subnets, or from your private subnet to your NAT instance. Depending on your EC2 or your instance performance, that's how the internet traffic would be distributed. One of the disadvantages of a NAT instance is that it is not highly available. It is not resilient because it does not go. It is not created within multiple AZs automatically. Now, the NAT gateway is the AWS managed resources. It does give you better availability, higher bandwidth for your resources, and you do not have to administer it yourself. It is an AWS managed resource for the NAT gateway. You pay by the hour for the usage, and it is created in a specific availability zone. And just like your NAT instances as well, it does utilize the elastic IP. Let's see here. Within the NAT gateway as well, you do not have to manually configure your security group yourself. Let's take a look at a highly available, a NAT gateway with high availability. Within your VPC, if you guys are taking a look at this diagram that we have here, you can see where your NAT gateway is associated right here. You can see that it is in the public subnet in itself, just so you know. You have your VPC and your VPC internet gateway going within the public, and the NAT gateway also going within the public. The NAT gateway in itself is resilient within a single availability zone, but you must create multiple NAT gateways in multiple AZs for fault tolerance. So just because of the way that this is created, you have to manually create other NAT gateways within multiple AZs. If you know, there's a reason why because of fault tolerance, there's a reason why we always create our resources in more than just one AZ. If one goes down, we want to be able to transition or fail over to the second one without disrupting our resources or our applications or whatever we have running within AWS. All right, security groups. Within AWS, our security groups, they work as basically like our first, like our first firewall um, for our resources, for people to be able to gain access to your resources. You have to set certain rules within your security group as well. Um, you can use your security group name as the source of the destination and other group rules. The security group name as the source in its own inbound security group rules. As you can see, within your when you create a security group, they are directional and can only use allow rules only. You can only use an allow rule within the security group. If you notice, that means that there's no explicit denial of access with your security group. That's why we're just like, this is just a one-step layer for your resources first at the instance level um, within AWS. They're your VPC resources, different that work with your EC2 instances, all within different availability zones or in all the availability zones that you have resources in. Whenever you make any changes within your security group, it takes effect immediately. So you don't have to wait or restart your instances for it to take effect. Now, there are a couple of different things in regards to the security groups, and which would be like with the default, having the default security groups, and then also taking a look at the your custom security group configurations. Let's just take a look at some of the differences that we have here. So with the default security group, which is the one that is created by AWS when your VPCs are created, uh, the inbound rules allowing instances assigned the same security group to talk to one another. All outbound traffic is allowed with the default security group. When you create a custom security group, no inbound, no inbound rule. Basically, all inbound traffic is denied by default. All outbound rules are also allowed here, but nothing is able to come in. So anything that is not within your within the same security group would not be able to communicate with each other. Network access control, also known as the NACL. NACL, they're like your like a firewall, which controls traffic from and to your subnet. It functions at the subnet level of your resources. Network access control lists are stateless in nature, meaning that all outbound traffic uh, for your resources are allowed. For an allowed inbound traffic must be explicitly allowed. All outbound traffic for an allowed inbound traffic must be explicitly allowed um, for your resources. You can have a permit and deny rules in your NACL. Basically having a set of rules, and each rules has a number. So that is the order in which they will be executed. The network access control list also ends with an explicit deny any rule which you are not able to delete. A subnet must be associated with your NACL. If you do not specify the network access control list, the subnet will get automatically associated with the default NACL that was created within AWS. All right, and we keep on moving here. We're going to take a look at some of the differences between your security groups and the network access control list. So when you take a look at this table here, you can see where these resources are best implemented or what they're best used for. When you're thinking about your security groups in itself, you can see that the security group operates at the instance level of your resource. They do support allow rules only. It is stateful in nature. Basically, return traffic is automatically allowed regardless of any other rules. So always keep that in mind. Um, with the security groups, all traffic will always be evaluated before deciding whether or not to allow it. Um, like we said, it applies at the instance level. If someone specifies the security group when launching the instance or associates the security group with the instance later on, everything will still be there. Now, when you take a look at what we have for your network access control, you see that it operates at the subnet level because you're dealing with your network here, right? So it supports allow rules and deny rules. Which lets you know that that is stateless in nature. Because return traffic, you must allow the traffic to for it to be able to route it properly there. Return traffic must be explicitly allowed by your rules that you have put in place. Um, and then the rules are processed in a numerical order when deciding whether or not to allow the traffic in. Um, And this automatically applies to all your instances in that subnet. So it definitely provides an additional layer of defense if the security groups are too permissive. So it just gives you a little bit more cushion for your security that for the security that you're trying to put in place. Now that is going to pretty much be it in terms of our connectivity aspect of our resources. So let me just recap really quickly what I just went over, right? From from the beginning, understanding once you create your VPC, you also are automatically route table is automatically created for you. Once your route table is configured properly, you know that you are then able to associate it with an internet gateway, for you to be able to route traffic in and out of your resources or your VPC. So those are pretty much the things there. What I was saying earlier, without the route table being properly configured, you will not be able to gain access for inbound traffic or outbound traffic, even if you do have the internet gateway attached to your VPC. So always make sure that your route tables are definitely configured properly for you to be able to gain internet or have internet access. Now, keeping that in mind, when we now start to talk about security on the level of some of the security that we put in place for our VPC resources, your security groups play a big role in that as well as your network access control list. As you can see, we have your stateful like firewalls that are put into place by your security group and your stateless firewalls, so to speak, being put into place by your network access control list. Understanding that the security group is at the instance level of your resources and the network access control list is operating at the subnet level of your access control is something that you really just want to keep in mind. Stateful and stateless resources, those are two very important statements that I believe that we should have a good understanding of. Basically, you have to keep in mind when something is stateless, when your resource is stateful, it allows traffic automatically. Return traffic is automatically allowed, regardless of any rules that you have in place. But when you have stateless, a stateless firewall, your return traffic must be explicitly allowed. So it automatically, when something is stateless, it automatically denies all incoming or outgoing traffic until the rules are put in place to allow or to deny. So always keep that in mind. Now, do we have any questions so far in regards to that?
No, go ahead. You're doing good.
Not a problem, Ovier. Thank you. Excuse me. All right, so now we're gonna just take a look at what VPC peering is. Um, Within AWS, right? When you think about when you create one VPC, you create a VPC, or you have multiple VPCs. Let's use this instance. When you have multiple VPCs within your organization, your VPCs cannot communicate with any other VPC, even if the VPC belongs to the same account. So that is where VPC peering comes into place. When you have a big organization, trust me, you're going to have multiple VPCs within that organization, and they all might have interconnections with each other. So they have to be able to communicate. That is where VPC peering comes into play, because once you have that configured, it allows two VPCs to be able to communicate with each other with the VPC peering connection. A VPC peering connection is a connection that is highly available networking connection between two VPCs that enables routing traffic between them using that private IPv4, IPv6 addresses. Instances in either the VPC can communicate with each other if they are within the same network. So you have to keep in mind, if you have a VPC in one account, let's say in a KPMG account for the business account, and then you have another organization that you're trying to create some type of connection with because you utilize some of the same resources, then a VPC peering connection would be highly recommended. Now, you can create a VPC peering connection between your own VPCs or with the VPCs or with a VPC in another account within the same region or between AWS regions. There is no single point of failure in the VPC peering connection, so you do not need to worry about creating two VPC peering connections for redundancy or high availability. So you don't have to worry about the network breaking up or anything like that when it comes to this. Now, for that connection to be established, there are some things that you have to keep in mind. There must not be any overlapping IP ranges between the two VPCs. Now, request from a VPC has to be initiated. So basically, before the connection can be made, one account has to make the request to the other account, and it has to be accepted. Now, routing your security group and your network access control list has to be updated to allow traffic in both direction. When you're configuring your VPC peering, you also have to configure your route table, your network security group, your NACL, even your route table in some instances here will also have to be configured to allow traffic both ways so that you don't have any hiccups in that connection. So basically, when you're setting your incoming or your outgoing rules in your security groups, you definitely want to reference that for your VPC peering. A VPC peering connection is a one-to-one relationship between two VPCs. You can create multiple VPC peering connections for each VPC that you own. Transitive peering relations. Yes, Balanle, you can definitely get the slides at the end of the class. Let's see here. the one-to-one relationship between your VPC, between two VPCs. You can create multiple VPC peering connections for each VPC that you own. Let me give me 1 second here. Now, when you're speaking in regards to your transitive peering relationships, they are not supported within AWS, meaning that even if you do have your VPN, if you're utilizing a VPN or something of that effect there, it would not work with your VPC peering the way that you would think. You cannot have more than one VPC peering connection between the same two VPCs at the same time. Now, since we just finished up with the VPC peering, we are going to speak a little bit in regards to the VPN. The virtual private networks being created. A VPN, if you're not familiar, is a secure connection over the internet or a direct connection between your on-premise and your AWS resource. The VPN connections are quick, easy to deploy, and very cost-effective. A virtual gateway is required on your VPC side, and also a customer gateway on the client side of the data center. You need your routable IP addresses is required on your customers, on the customer side, on the client side. 2 tunnels are also configured for each VPN connection for redundancy, so failover, so to speak. You do not need to use the NAT gateway in your VPC when you have a virtual private network going on, being utilized through the VPN connection. All right, so now we are moving on to route propagation. Basically, when we're looking at route propagation, what that is doing, enabling dynamic route propagation, it allows your subnets to communicate with the on-premise resources or your on-premise subnets. You need to update the route tables of the subnets in the VPC to point to your gateway. Alternatively, you can enable route propagation in these route tables such that the routes to your gateway learns over the VPN connections are dynamically propagated to your route table. Give me 1 second. Let me reread that. You need to wait. All right, first of all, let's go over what route propagation itself is, or what it does. When it comes to route propagation, that allows a virtual private gateway to automatically propagate the routes to your route table. So when you're looking at gaining access, it allows you to be able to create that route that is needed for your route table. So you don't need to manually enter your VPN routes to the route table. You are able to propagate it by just utilizing the virtual gateway, your private gateway that is created. But you always have to make sure to enable this for you to be able to utilize that. And all of this has to do with your virtual private gateway within your resources. And that's when you're trying to connect your on-prem resources with your cloud resources. So you're trying to create a connection between those two resources there. on a private network. And now we're moving on to the VPN, the cloud hub that we have for the VPN. Within AWS, you have up to 10 IPsec connections per virtual gateway. That's the soft limit that is created by AWS for these resources. Like we always say, you can always contact, if you always need more of a particular resource within AWS, you can always contact them to see about increasing the limits in which, increase the limits for what you need. The VPN Cloud Hub is basically a VPN-based hub connectivity for your virtual gateways. You can mix the connections with your VPN connections. They can communicate with each other within the VPC or with the VPC. Don't worry, we're going to go a little bit more into detail because now we're talking about your private connections going to your AWS resources and some on-prem resources. For you to even be able to create some of this connectivity, you have to think of how you're making it happen, how you're going to make it happen. For you to make your VPN work, you definitely, like we were just saying, you need your route propagation, you need the VPN connectivity set up and put in place with your subnet rules and your subnet route tables and everything configured for you to be able to utilize those resources there, or to at least make everything work and communicate properly with each other. There are a couple of things to keep in mind when it comes to communication or receiving and sending traffic through your VPN connection. When you're using a VPN connection for your resources, only the IP prefixes that are known by your private gateway would be allowed. Excuse me. Basically, when we're talking about IP prefixes, we're talking about you being able to specify the set of IP addresses that you have going to your resources, from your static IP addresses to your dynamic allocated IP addresses. Your virtual gateway learns about these prefixes through the static or the BGP routing. What BGP stands for in this particular case will be your border gateway protocol. What it does, it is used to exchange your routing information for the internet, and it's a protocol that is used between your internet service provider, which are different in most cases. So it's just a way for them to communicate, and it learns that through either the prefixes that you already have in place for that. Your virtual gateway does not route any other traffic destined outside of the received BGP, your static entries, or whether or not it is attached to your CIDR block. With this, you cannot access your elastic IPs on your VPC side using the VPC tunnel established elastic IPs. So basically your AWS elastic IPs in most cases, when using that VPN connection, you will not be able to access those IPs. And the other thing there with the connectivity, because you will no longer need to use a NAT gateway because you're going to have connectivity being provided by your VPN. You do not need to use a NAT gateway in your VPC over the VPN network. Now let's take a look at what VPC Direct Connect and AWS Direct Connect, what they do or what it is. As the name implies, Direct Connect simply just means direct connection, not needing internet service between, it basically provides higher speeds, low latency, higher performance than being on the internet, than the internet. A virtual interface is required from the customer router to the direct connect router. You need one private VIF to connect to your private VPC subnets, and one public VIF to connect to your AWS public service. When you think about what, I know somebody just asked me, what is a VIF? Basically, a VIF is a variance inflation factor. When you have multiple resources, there has to be a correlation between the multiple independent variables in which you have. So you have to think about that. That's what the VIF does for the connection to your private VPCs to your subnet. You cannot establish layer 2 over the direct connection, the direct connect connection. And you also cannot, use a NAT instance gateway in your VPC over the direct connection as well. Oh, I'm hearing somebody in the background with their TV on. Thank you. Basically, with AWS Direct Connect, we have high availability with a direct connection, and you can have 2 dedicated links from the customer location to the to 2 direct connect routers as well. These routers will then connect through your AWS infrastructure to your VPC virtual gateway, which can also be redundant hardware, which could be a physical hardware endpoints on your AWS side. So a little bit more in regards to that is that when you're looking at your on-prem resources and you're trying to connect to AWS, but you don't want to connect over the internet, you can use a direct connection between your on-prem directly to AWS. So a lot of times when they with the exam, if they're ever asking you questions about, hey, you're trying to avoid connecting to the internet when you're trying to transfer some type of information or some resources within AWS, you can always use direct connect for those things. With AWS Direct Connect, you have high availability and fault tolerance. Highest in terms of availability, 2 direct connections from 2 different providers. These are some of the things that you have available when you're using Direct Connect. So basically it is fault tolerance because pretty much 2 of everything is being created. So in case you have an issue with one, the other one is still running for it to, for your resources to keep operating properly, for you to have that connection stay steady and constant. And basically, I believe for our direct connect here, once you have the connection in place, you can access all availability zones in a particular region, and you can establish the VPN tunnels as well with your direct connection over the public VIF to connect to your VPCs in the remote regions as well. I hope that makes sense. Now, think about this. You can only have one default route per route table for access when it comes to your direct connection. You see that you have your 0.0.0.0/0 for that route table. You know that if you have that set, you're allowing traffic from anywhere coming into your VPC. Now, route propagation can be used to have the virtual gateway send the customer side's route to the respective VPC private subnets route table. So when you properly set up your gateway and you're trying to create the connection from between your customer to a particular VPC resource, you can do that by, definitely modifying your route table and modifying the endpoints that you're trying to, gain access to for your VPC. Now that's just a direct connect side. Now there's a difference when it now comes to a little bit of a difference when it comes to the direct connect gateway. The gateway aspect of direct connect is a globally available resource, meaning you can create the direct connect gateway in any public region and access it from all public regions. You can use it uses the AWS Direct Connect gateway to connect to your VPCs. You can also associate your Direct Connect gateway with either of the following type of gateways: your virtual private gateways of your VPC, or your transit gateway when you have multiple VPCs in the same region. So when you're trying to create connectivity between your resources within the same region, and you're not trying to allow it to have internet access from the outside, you can use the direct connection with the transit gateway to get that done. You're able to create a private virtual interface. The private virtual interface for an AWS Direct Connect connection to the gateway. You can attach multiple private interfaces to your Direct Connect gateway from different locations, from one Direct Connect link connected to different customer gateways. Basically, all of this is done by creating association proposal from the Direct Connect gateway in one account to the virtual gateway in the other account. The limitations that we now have with the direct connections, be it the direct connect, especially for the gateway limitations, is the VPCs in which you connect through, they cannot have overlapping CIDR blocks. If you add an IPv4 CIDR to a VPC that's associated with a direct connect gateway, you have to make sure that the CIDR block does not overlap with an existing CIDR associated with that particular VPC. You cannot create a public virtual interface for a direct connect. So when you're speaking about your direct connections, it's always going and being routed through your private side of things there. With the Direct Connect gateway, it does support communications between your attached private virtual interfaces and the associated private virtual private gateways only. The following traffic flows are not supported with Direct Connect. Direct communication between the VPCs that are associated, direct communication between the virtual interfaces that are attached to the virtual connect gateway, direct communication between a virtual interface attached to a direct connect gateway, and a VPN, and the VPN connection on a virtual private gateway that's associated with the same direct connect gateway. So there are a couple, those are just a list of some of the limitations that we have in terms of reasons why you might not want to use a direct connect connection for your resources. A lot of things, a lot of companies will utilize some of these things, let's say a direct connection during a period where they're trying to migrate some of their resources. So because they don't want any lapse in operation, they will create, and they're trying to migrate, right? So they will create a direct connection with their on-prem resources to AWS and transfer some of the data or some of the resources that they might want to transfer, or also just have access, because they can also route the access from the AWS resources to their on-prem resources as well. So you just have to keep in mind that it can be used for many things when it comes to a direct connection link. And I believe for me, that is pretty much where I'm going to end this off today. This seems like a lot of information in regards to the connectivity of our VPC resources and the type of connections or connectivity that we can have to all these resources. When you talk about your direct connection, your transit gateway, your VPC peering, those are all things that you have to look at in terms of how everything is communicating with each other. And I will leave it at that. And we are done for today. It was really a pleasure being able to take over today's class or session, so to speak. And thank you guys so much. If there are any questions or any other input, please let me know. This was my first recording, my first live, my first live actually trying something like this. So I hope I did well. Thank you.
Very, very good. Very good. My question, I have a question, and my question is, have you started working as an architect, solutions architect? If no, then why? Or why not? Why are you not working right now?
Well, I have not started working yet. I have been applying, and I have gone through some interviews so far. Um, right now we are looking onto God, you know what I mean? We're hoping that something will come in soon. We're gonna be like this year, I'm definitely gonna be more aggressive in terms of putting more applications out. So I'm really just getting my feet wet, and I'm trying to get more comfortable. This is one of the main reasons why I decided that, you know what, let me even take over today's class. Was I want to be able to get comfortable speaking to people, because sometimes when you get when you get in that interview hot seat and you have 4, 5, 6 people in the Zoom call, everybody looking at the camera, looking at you, and they're listening to everything that you're saying. It can be daunting sometimes, you know what I mean? Like it can be real daunting. So I'm trying to get comfortable with the interview process itself. And that's it, man. This year we're definitely going hard for it.
I mean, I see it coming soon, very soon. I mean, this year to me is going to be a year for, for us to all celebrate and turn this group into a jobs group, a jobs support group,
Yes, sir.
and you really nailed it. You really did, a very good job. You explained it, to the T's and the I's. You dotted everything, and I mean, I was just thinking, I was listening to a Udemy course, that I bought, and I'm really happy that, and this is what I was trying to say with every one of us. The more you come out to speak, the better your chances, the more mistakes the more you make all the mistakes that are there to be made. And eventually, there will be very, very little mistakes to make. So by the time you face the interviewer, you've made all the mistakes there are to make. You will make very, very few mistakes. And you know, people want to see a confident person. They want to hire someone that is confident and knows what he's doing. So I'm really, really impressed. And you know, so I wanted to just, I think Timex is here. I don't know if he's here now. Okay, he's here. Yeah, I mean, you can, you can take over.
Okay, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Everybody. Good evening. You did actually pretty well. Like, your voice, you have this tone of voice coming like my teacher's voice, and I was just listening. Like my friend you said, it's as if it's something that you have been doing since, and then you just use this opportunity, you know. Wow, you did very, very well. And we learned, for me, I've learned so much from the explanations. And I think I would have to go over the video again, listening your voice, and then what is the role. And I believe I will be able to do a little of what you have done in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you. And you said something like this is the second time you're saying it. You said that you would be very aggressive in this year, and sometimes when we call this afternoon, you said something. The one this year, I was thinking of you using from now to 1 week to want to address me after like 2 weeks you interview and then you start working. So not this year, like this year, it's massive. Let's talk about this. If you have to retweak your CV if it's not ready, or maybe there's something that you want to have to read and start applying, because we are getting testimonies in this house. Lots of us will be motivated. A lot of people are not studying. So people like you that are good at coming in with testimonies, one share, people will be encouraged to go back and pick up their trainings. And not too long, we all will have 1 or 2 things to testify of. Yeah, by the way, I just want to tell you that the instructor is my friend. You understand? And that are my friends, they are very, very good. To my friends. So my friends are very, very good and they do well in things like this. So yeah. Good.
And Timex, your audio is really going in and out. I could not even catch most of what you said just now.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, let me leave the floor to others now to make their contributions, ask questions, and then we move on with it.
No problem. Please, and anybody else, critique is welcome. If you guys were just listening in, we do like some input in regards to your thoughts, questions, anything that you may want to add. Please just go ahead. We're all learning, like we've all said. So if there's anything you would like to speak on, please go ahead. I really want to hear from everybody because some of the people in this class, I haven't met you guys before, and it's just good for us to network with each other. So it's always good that, sometimes we hear your voice. Alon Shala, Omiza, Omieza. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Longe, I always hear you, so you're good. Olayemi, let's hear your voice. Wendy, I always see your name, but I never hear your voice either.
Okay, let me go ahead and talk. Thank you for giving this much. Okay, so it was a nice, session, and I like it the way you just explain it. And I have one question, really. I'm different field other than this, IT. I'm civil
Right.
engineer, but I want to, go ahead with the IT as, side hustle or
Yes.
doing a secondary job. I'm trying to learn a lot about this, associate level. I want to just take the associate exam and go ahead and apply for that one. I just
Yes.
wonder. If what is all day-to-day activity for architect? As an architect associate, what will be the day-to-day activity? Is it all about the one you show us, like VPN networking or something like that, or it's different day-to-day activity?
Okay, so this on that particular topic that you just asked, there will be many different variations of answers that you will get for that. One thing that has always been constant that I've heard from everybody that is a solutions architect is that they are involved in a lot of meetings. In a lot of the meetings in regards to what they're trying to do. Speaking with stakeholders in regards to what they're trying to do and what type of architecture they're trying to build out, right? An architect is supposed to be able to kind of like put a visual to the ideas that the organization has. So let's say if you're coming from a consultant standpoint and a new company, they want to create and be in the cloud, right? They want to create their organization in the cloud. They would need an architect. They'll need a group of architects, right, to speak or to collaborate in regards to, hey, how do we design this? We have one application that we're trying to push. And for us to push out that application, we have to make sure that the application is secured. We have to make sure that the application is highly available. We have to make sure that the application is fault tolerant. All those things will now come into place, and you have to be able to visualize it for them. So a lot of the guys say most of the time they're just involved in meetings and the planning of building out those resources. Now, as an architect, you now might be asked um, to build out something, to be a part of the project that actually builds out what you guys planned. So as you all know, within that scope of time, within that situation, then you guys will now delegate because you'll always have a team. You're never just working by yourself. You know what I mean? You'll always have a team, and you'll always have to collaborate with other individuals or other teams. So as an architect, you'll be collaborating with the DevOps guys. You'll be collaborating with the security team. So that's one of the reasons why, like, the architect, from what I've seen so far, is like a jack of all trades in terms of you kind of know enough about pretty much everything that is going on. You have some knowledge of how the VPC works, how the network connectivity is put in place, and things of that nature. Like, you have to just have some idea of how all the pieces, all the puzzle pieces, come together. There have been guys that I've heard of that have worked for like 6 months, 3, 4 months, and all they did was participate in meetings, and they never really had to do anything. So it really just depends. If you're working with a startup, though, you know that you're going to work, and if you're dealing with contracts, then you know that you're going to work because they brought you on for a particular project or to work on a particular project. So keep that in mind as well.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate.
No problem. Oh,
Okay, Tolu, yeah, me speaking now. Um,
hello.
yeah, that's a very good presentation. I really, really enjoy it. The question is, have you done solution architects? Because with this explanation, you won't tell me you don't already have the certificate.
Yes, I passed my solutions architect exam. Was it in November? I believe earlier in November last year or so. And I posted it in the group when I got it done.
Oh, that's beautiful. Because with the explanation, I was just like, no, this is really, really good. This is really good. Thank you for
We're
coming
trying.
online to cheer everybody up, and this is so beautiful. That's what I can
Awesome.
say.
Thank you.
Just
Thank you.
all
But,
right.
by the way, Tolu, by the way,
Yes.
you don't look, in a first day presentation. It's an experienced presenter,
First time. That's the first time for everything.
Really?
I'm glad you guys.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good, really. Yeah, it seems, a lot of experience, That's good.
No, I'm trying to get comfortable with public speaking, man. Sometimes it's like you can't be in this line of work, you can't be too shy and you can't be
Yep.
too quiet either. Like you have to be able to speak up. So I'm trying to get more comfortable being in a
Yeah,
setting where I
it's
actually.
it's a good chance to be, talk here, like, it will give you a
Mhm.
chance. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. There's still some of y'all that are, that haven't said anything. If everybody is good, I mean, we can definitely, go on about our evening. That's all we have for today. But oh, Timex, do we have any plans for what we're gonna be doing for the next class? Or when it's going to be?
Yeah, if we have another class, it will be good for us,
Definitely. I'm gonna put it like this. Now, one thing that I'm working on personally, right? Because I'm trying to go the security route. I am working on the Quailies training for the
Okay.
vulnerability management. So that's something that if you're thinking of going that security route, those are things that would be good to have under your belt. Um, if you have your business email, you can register and the training is relatively free. You can get, once you have their certifications and things like that, you'll be able to speak better in regards to some of the security, in regards to the security aspect of things, especially patch management, um, security posture management, compliance, especially dealing with PCI or your NIST protocols or things of that nature, you'll be able to speak better about those. So that's what I'm personally working on now. I'm trying to get better, more hands-on, right? With the security side.
Yeah, it's good idea. So in addition, I have one thing to say. So if we do at the end of the day, all of us, we might go through, in the security route or, associates level or, architecture. So
Yes.
if we don't mind, if we do some, mini project, like from scratch to the final stage, like architectural, what do we need to
Oh,
do
yes.
from, yeah, if it will be good for us, don't you think?
Oh no, that is what this group is definitely about. We are looking at building out projects that will help us to have some hands-on experience and hands-on knowledge. Um, but we have to be able to put it into play because what you have to keep in mind is a lot of these projects, when it comes to the hands-on aspect of it, is going to cost us money. It's going to cost everybody money when you're trying to use some of the resources within AWS. Um, so just keep that in mind. But we will be working on some projects later on down the line. Everybody right now, from what it seems like, is still working on their certification. A lot of us are still working on the certification. So because of that, they're not at the let's do the project stage per se right now, but we will be doing more hands-on stuff as we go.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you, Tolu.
Oh, no, no problem. T, what's going on? How are you doing today? We haven't heard from you. Fumi, what's going on? How are you?
Hello, are you guys talking about me?
Well, yeah, I was speaking.
Hello,
I
can
was
you hear
asking
me?
earlier. Yeah, I was asking earlier when the next class would be, and kind of like what we would be covering for the next class.
Okay, outrightly, we cannot go ahead to announce it now because we have to look at sample certain level of knowledge and look for needs, and so we identify areas that something must be done, within this period. So we'll look for something that when we talk about it, it will really impact the people and their level of knowledge. So we may not by tomorrow morning. I think I'll be able to sound opinions and then come up with what we would be learning tomorrow evening if we would have the time, or maybe next tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Sounds good.
Okay. We have it recorded, and I would like to share it later. Would download it and send it, create a link to share it for everybody to, like, for me, I'm not seeing the video. I think the problem is with my phone. So I will share the link. So what are an opportunity to be in this class, we would still sit down and then learn what we have learned of.
Sounds good. Sounds
Okay.
good.
So
Ovio, welcome back.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Should I go on? Yeah, recently I discovered that some of us in this forum are already good in the cyber security and the cloud security aspect of it. So those of you that are in America, UK, I think it's time for you to tweak your CV and your profile in a way that you can also show that interviews. Throughout today, I was working with Benjamin. Different companies were calling him, and he was just responding to them as if he's the only one in UK. He's in Greater Manchester, and as if he's the only one in the UK because the way they are calling him. So I wouldn't want members of this group to be, dragging behind. Through your CV, and once you have the invite, we will be able to look at it, and then we'll prepare everybody. We'll gather materials for you to be prepared, and you get it. You get the job. So we're not going to be looking at solution architects alone. We would also look at the cloud security aspect and the cyber security aspect. You may want to add vulnerability management if you don't want to go in detail about that. Then tweak it. So as they are coming, you're capturing cloud computing job and the cloud security aspect of it. And whatever thing that is required of you to scale through the interview will be made available onto you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So that is that.
When can we have another mock interview?
Okay, if we're gonna have another mock interview, maybe we'll schedule one for Friday. So he's ready to interview. That's just the question. Okay, so do you want to go in? You want to be interviewed as solution architect or cloud security? But it will be appropriate if you first of all secure an invite from a potential employer before we now start doing that with you.
Gotcha. Okay, not a problem. Not a problem. We'll see how it goes.
And any contribution, any other question before we call it a day?
Sounds like everybody is good for the day.
But if you just got in, you just got in. So do you have any contribution?
Sorry?
Okay, in the absence of none, let's call it a day. Thank you very much. God bless you. The jobs are coming, the jobs are hard. I have confirmed it through Benjamin and the MC. So I believe the jobs are there. So let's keep studying. Thank you. God bless you. Have a wonderful night. And a prolific year.
Tolu, can
Yes.
you share the slide, please?
The slide. Let me see here.
On the Telegram, if you possible.
Yes, I could definitely.
Okay, Tolu is going to share the
Thank you.
slide,
Thank you, Tolu.
in the group, in the Telegram group. Okay. All right. Class.
Sorry, I might say if anybody has any other slide on another topic or something, you can please feel free to share it on the Telegram for every other person, please.
Sounds good.
If we are done, can I just end the Zoom now, or what do you guys
Yes,
think?
I believe we're good for the day.
Okay. So that the recording will not be too long.
Right.
Yeah, please also share the recordings. I'd like to listen again.
I'm gonna do that, definitely.
Also, anybody that's good in security, that's testing and all those stuff, I want to learn. I want to learn that area, Barracuda and all those things. I want to learn.
Me
Okay,
too, because
thank you.
funny enough, like me, I was working, like I was saying earlier, I don't know if you were in the room, then I was speaking in regards to going through the qualies, or going through their training program. That would definitely help in regards to having some more knowledge for the security side.
Who's that?
Qualies, the Qualies training.
Can you maybe type it, or do you have a link?
Yeah, I would send out the link. I'll put the link in the group in just a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna just end the meeting now. Thank you everyone for coming online. Thank you, Tolu, for the great presentation. This is so beautiful. And thanks to everyone that is about coming online to come present to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a good day.
Take
You
care.
too. Everybody have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.